I've stayed with friends off and on and in emergency housing, and thankfully so far I've had enough friends to allow me to sleep in their homes.
Ashley Stevenson has been couch surfing for the past 18 months since her two housemates moved out.
I wasn't able to get anyone else to move in, and I knew I couldn't afford to pay over $1,000 a fortnight on JobSeeker, so I just had to walk away.
The 65-year-old lost her job 8 years ago and hasn't been able to find a full-time position since. Instead, she does volunteer work and spends 3 hours a week gardening.
I've got 2 tertiary qualifications, but it seems there's some invisible barrier that I can't discern between me and employers.
Just a few years ago, Ashley was helping to feed the homeless. Now she's homeless herself.
Unless you've been there yourself, it's hard to understand having to choose between food and shelter. If you're older, like me, and you need a couple of medications, which ones can you have and which ones do you have to say no to?
Low and modest income earners like Ashley are in the grips of a housing crisis.
If you're on JobSeeker, that's just $44 per day. You're back in deep poverty and you cannot afford to find any rents at all.
When I was renting, I couldn't afford haircuts. So I had to go without 7 meals to save up for a haircut.
The pandemic has only compounded the problem.
We've had a toxic combination in terms of rental affordability in Australia, with many people losing their jobs. We've had a housing boom, which has flown through into rapid increases in private rental prices.
If you live in the inner city, rents have shot up by 7%. In our regions, it's much worse, 12% and rising.
The private rental market is where people would have gone, often moving to regional areas in search of cheaper rents, but those rents are going through the roof.
There's next to no affordable housing for pensioners, people on JobSeeker and single parents.
It's almost impossible to work full-time when you have a kid, especially a young kid. As a single parent, like being accepted for rentals is extremely difficult because you have one stream of income and it's usually Centrelink, and, you know, landlords don't really want to rent out to you.
Rent has been chewing through 40% of Ashna's income support payments for the past 2.5 years. Like millions of other Aussies, the coronavirus supplement was welcome relief while it lasted.
It enabled me to be able to save and sort of bulk buy groceries and do sort of things that made me feel a bit more secure financially, not having to live pay to pay.
Ash has this month started working full-time, and while half of her pay will still go on rent, she's more confident about the future.
I'm in a better position than a lot of single mums. They have far less at their disposal to be able to manage their day-to-day lives. The dream is to be able to buy a house, just like have the financial security of paying off my own mortgage instead of someone else's.
But for Ashley, tomorrow is as far forward as she can look. She's one of 155,000 people on the social housing wait list, with no end in sight.
I've applied for priority housing 3 times in the last 6 years and been refused every time, whether I was homeless or not.
The federal government can fix this overnight by at least increasing social security so that people are lifted above the poverty line and are more able to afford those private rentals and a big investment into social and affordable housing. We can't wait any longer.
I just take it a day at a time, and I pray that my public housing will come through one day before I die.
Just to hear those stats, 155,000 people on a wait list for public housing, and that Ashley is having to choose between medications, which medication she prioritises. It breaks your heart to hear that sort of stuff, and that the people who are making the decisions aren't in that sort of financial pressure. Like, unless you've ever felt like this, I think it would be really hard. It's just... It's staggering to me.
No ability to empathise. And once upon a time, not that this was ever ideal, but the ability to move into the regions could at least find housing stocks and cheaper. But as the report makes the point, almost double the increase in the regions because of COVID and people breaking out of cities as a result of it. It's shot those rents up even higher.
Yeah, it's so disappointing, isn't it? The job seeker, it actually sits you below the poverty line. So how are you supposed to get ahead? How are you supposed to get in front?
And we had MyEFO show more and more debt into all sorts of support mechanisms, but not for the people who need it most.